Hi, Chris Burns here for another coffee chat, and joining me today is Scott Gwatney. How you doing today,
Doing
buddy?
good, man. How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Normally, you and I are sitting at a desk together doing TV, but today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to have a chat about income planning.
Absolutely. I
That
like
should be
change.
that should be right up your wheelhouse.
Yes, absolutely.
So we get asked this about every time we sit down with someone for the first time: is what should they bring to help us put together an income plan?
Exactly. No, and look, from that first meeting, and I think we say this in the workshops and things like that. Just bring as much as you can to that first meeting, and it's really that's going to allow us once we find out your goals and the retirement plan portion and what we're planning for. The more details and more information we have to work with, the better we can put together a more accurate plan to say, okay, yes, you can, no, you can't. For are we 10 years out, 5 years out? So that's just, I guess, my biggest thing is for that first meeting, bring as much information as possible. It's only going to help us be more accurate in our projections.
And I think one of the things that when we do sit down with someone, one of the harder questions, which someone maybe not get, they're not asked that all the time, is what is your monthly expenses?
Yep.
And everyone does it a little bit differently. And I've seen some apps out there, and I've seen even people do it old school and just pen and paper or an Excel document. When we talk about expenses, what are some things we mean by that, and why do we want to know that?
Really, to really, a lot of clients haven't looked at that specifically. They know they got the mortgage, the car note, utility bills that come in, but really it kind of helps break down what are those extracurricular activities. Maybe it's going out to eat. Maybe they travel a good bit. Maybe they have kids in this travel baseball, travel sports. It's really going to show and break down those extra expenses. So even if it's a very small or lightly done expense sheet, something's better than nothing, and we can read them all. To your point, I mean, cursive handwriting all the way to the Excel spreadsheets from
You've
the
seen it
engineers.
all.
We've seen it all, and we can read it all. Even the apps, we're pretty good on those apps too.
That's
So
good.
I think just having those set up and having an idea of what you're spending, because you have a pretty good idea of what's coming in, because you get that on your paycheck every month. But really, just kind of being able to look at those expenses. That's really kind of what we want to do too.
That's correct. I mean, one thing that I've seen is nothing's getting cheaper. So the income plan, knowing the expenses is always going to be important, especially when we start talking about inflation and everything
Yeah.
else. In regards to the income plan itself, I've heard it a number of different ways about how savings to investing to when is the right time to sit down with a financial advisor. You got any opinion on that?
I personally think the sooner the better. And I say that because, we've had clients that are already retired that just want a second opinion, all the way to, recently, within the year, they got a package. They were, so I mean, we've had everything from right now. That 5 to 10 year window is always nice as well, because that helps us kind of make that projection to retirement, and as life happens, make adjustments appropriately. But really, I mean, 5 to 10 years out, but just starting to get a plan whenever. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
even if
10-year
it's
window is important, man. Like
yep,
you were saying, is just that it you can almost fix just about anything if you're given 10 years heads up to plan for it. So if you see like someone like your example, right? You're sitting down with a client and you say, "Hey, look, I see income potentially being a problem."
right.
Having 5 years to fix that versus 10 years, I mean, it
Yes.
opens up just about anything to you,
Well,
right?
it makes it a lot easier for you to realize, okay, well, maybe this is attainable, maybe this isn't attainable. Or maybe more realistic, hey, we need to start cutting back on all this other stuff we're spending money on now if we really want to be there in 10 years. To your point, it gives you a longer runway to kind of make those adjustments.
Now, that's we've talked a lot about someone 5 or 10 years out, and you briefly mentioned someone who is already retired, and
Mm-hmm.
they say, "Well, why do I need an income plan?"
Right.
My opinion would be that an income plan post-retirement is more important than pre-retirement.
Absolutely. What you're waiting on once you retire and you truly retire, I mean, even if you have a side job, all those assets that you have that you've built up that are now, producing income and pretty much working for you, that is almost, you can pull a certain amount of income off of those investments, but depending on what your plan was, those expenses, even the slightest change, can change the plan that you put together. So that's one thing that we want to sit down with our clients and do is every year look and say, okay, are the expenses changing or are we still on track? Because there's a lot of money there, and sometimes it's tempting to maybe dip a little bit more into those assets for other things. We just want to be able to make sure that plan stays together. So I think the expenses are really important when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some really good tools here that can help us attack the income plan from an expense side, an income side, even a tax side.
Mm-hmm.
And once you kind of put all this down, sometimes you can feel overwhelmed.
Yep.
Oh my God, this is all information I've never seen before. What are some things that you could say to someone now, saying, "Hey, look, it's a process, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint."
Right.
So talking about some milestones there is kind of walk a client through what they're going to expect from us over those first couple meetings in regards to help building out that income plan.
Yeah, well, the first meeting, like we said before, just as much information as possible. That first meeting is all about you. It's all about the client. It's all about what are those goals and where can we add value. The second meeting is always going to be about, here's what data that you gave us. Based upon that, here's what we found. Here's how, we would recommend investing some of the investments that you have based upon your goals. Here's some other ideas that we may have for you. Here's some tax strategies. Here's, there's a few different items and a few different tools we can use to say, okay, as we put this together, that second meeting is going to really be that one where we can show you where we can add value. And then, the third meeting will have a few other ideas that we can kind of talk about. And then really, once we have established that income stream and that expense that we're looking for in retirement, that third, fourth, and then the annual reviews, the 45-day calls down the road, those are going to help us make sure that we're still pretty much in between the ditches, that we're still on track. And as life happens, if something comes up, we're going to be able to kind of get back on track or at least make the appropriate adjustments.
And that's a really good point, because one of the things that I tell clients is that this retirement income roadmap that we're building out is not an end-all be-all. It's a living document.
Yeah.
It's something that's going to change every single time that we sit down with you.
Yeah.
And that's important because, like you were saying earlier, forecasting something 5-10 years out is great. It's a forecast, but now we're 5 years in, now we're 10 years in. We can't make adjustments. We can't just set something and then look at it again in 10 years. It's something that we got to continually monitor, continually to adjust. And that's kind of part of the process of working with a financial advisor. So kind of ties all that in together itself. And with Coffee Chat, we like to take simple topics like this and try to make it understandable for everyone.
Right.
But sometimes we'll also take these things that we think are simple and make it even more complicated.
Yes.
And so as people listen to these coffee and chats, if they've got questions, if they've got something they want to bring to our attention, what are some good ways to reach out to us?
Please do. Email, social media. Even on that front, just asking questions that way, setting appointments that way, giving us a call, sitting down with us, making notes, saying, hey, at our next meeting or even the next call. And that's what I like about the constant contact is as we call you, we're going to know what's happening in life. It may not always be an investment call. It may just be like, hey, how's things going? Oh, we had this come up. Well, now we know we have an expense, we have an unexpected event. We can go ahead and make plans for that for definitely our next sit-down meeting, or if we need to do something next week. So.
Scott, I really appreciate you sitting down with me for a few minutes to have this coffee and chat. And next time, maybe you can bring the coffee.
I'll bring the coffee for sure.
All right, that sounds fair. Thank you, man. Look forward to the next coffee and chat. The end. Should I press a button here? Don't touch nothing. It might explode.